Hello, welcome to the Golden Hawk Speaker Series. We're joined here with Georgie Carter, who is the mother of PFC Bruce Carter, which is a Medal of Honor recipient of the United States Marine Corps. And, we're glad to have her.
Well, thank you for having me here. Spent many years coming in and out of this school, as you can imagine, talking about Bruce mostly the last few years. This here, in about 8 or 10 years ago, that we finally got the hospital
2008.
named. Right?
2008.
We finally got the hospital named for Bruce. And you think I could go up and say, we're going to name this Bruce Carter. Well, no, you have to go through Congress because it's a federal building. So it took actually an act of Congress to get this done. So we got all the paperwork done and sent off to Washington, and guess what? 9/11. All the paperwork got lost. And it took me months to collect. Every Veterans Association in the state of Florida had to approve of us naming this hospital after Bruce. And a couple of people come to me, well, why did we name it after Joe Poe from Idaho? And I said, well, what's his rank? Oh, he was a private. I said, what did he do? Well, he was in service. No, he has to have the Medal of Honor, at least that high. Well, he doesn't have that. So I won that point. Because less than 4,000 of these medals have been given out since the 1700s. 4,000. Yet damn, we lost 58,000. So that many in all those years, less than 4,000. So this is very unusual. You see this, you will never see another one of these unless you find somebody like Bruce again, because they're few and far between. Anyway, we got the hospital named. If you open this up, you'll see some of the history of the hospital, and this is his citation, and that's as it was. No, this is a citation on the back. I'm sorry, that's me over here pointing, as usual, always pointing. But anyway, Ileana Ross Lakenham was the power behind this. In fact, as this was getting approved, she called me from Washington. She says, turn your TV on, turn your TV on. Well, she was in front of Congress asking them to approve of this. So I heard it over the TV. And of course, it was something I'd worked very hard for. And everybody in the Marine Corps League. The Marine Corps League of big guys like this is named after Bruce. The young Marines, do you know who the young Marines are? The young Marines are the little guys like this, 7, 8, and 10. And they're brought in by their parents, and they join, and they're dressed just like the military. I mean, they got the little boots on, and it's really adorable. There's one kid, I swear, his boot isn't that big. But they're so cute, and they mind, they learn. They don't learn war, they learn discipline. Respect the flag, respect your parents, respect everybody you're with, and that's what they teach them. Is that correct?
Drug-free from age 8 to 18 until you graduate high school.
Yeah.
We have 52 in our unit named after Bruce in Doral right now. And right now there are 19 units in the state of Florida, and I'm the regimental commander for all 19, so they all come under my command. We have 6,000 young Marines around the country, 2,500 adult volunteers that take care of them as mentors, and about 250 units around the country. It's a great organization, been around since 1959, and the biggest part of the program is to stay drug-free.
Oh, I forgot that. Stay
drug-free.
I was going to learn to have a Coke or something, Coca-Cola. And anyway, that tells you what the young Marines are. The Marine Corps League, that's a step above. It's Marines that were in the Corps and then retired, but here they are out here and they don't have their buddies. So they got together, and that's what the Marine Corps League is. Now, that is named after Bruce also. And you were commenting on that at one time? But anyway, they go around, they do good work, they collect toys. In fact, Toys for Tots. Anybody want a toy for Tot family? You are here. This guy does all the state of Florida. Now, that's not easy.
All the Florida Keys.
I'm sorry. Well, that's far enough. He's right, I'm wrong. Anyway, Toys for Tots. And we make sure that anybody that we know that has children that need anything, if your churches have young children that need some Christmas toys, let us know. And we'll see that they get them, won't we?
We sure will.
See, there's nothing to this. You just like that. Done. Other than that, all I can tell you is that I got an award yesterday. I was supposed to be on the day before. I had volunteered for 35 years at the VA hospital. Some people haven't worked there that long. And I have 14,000 volunteer hours. I've given them, the reason that this the gap in between, because when I became national president in the American Gold Star Mothers, I was in and out of Miami, back and forth here, so I didn't volunteer as much for at least 8 or 9 years. But I would always come to town and go down and see my veterans, and just Mama Bear's here to see what you're doing, and they appreciate me. And that's not tooting my horn. That's because the respect that I get up every day, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I can go down there. I'm 91. I get in my car and zip, down I go. Of course, everybody's afraid. Well, it's not the road, but anyway, I go down there. I have my own parking place, thank God. And they respect that. They respect that I can do it. So they say, she can do it, we can do it. Pick them up, put them down. That's what I tell them. Pick up, put them down. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. These women, I tell them, and I told the principal, they call me and say, I'm so lonesome. And I said, well, come on, go down to the hospital and volunteer. Oh, I can't do that. You know what I tell them? Some do, some don't do, and the rest mildew. And that's what they're saying. They're sitting home watching the salt, they're mildewing. And they're going to live maybe 4 or 5 years because they have no strength. They have all they know is Joe Kiss Jane or something on one of these shows. They don't know what's going on outside. They've let themselves get into this little clutch in here, and it's a pity party. And I don't agree with pity parties one bit. I don't allow pity in my house. I don't allow pity around me. Of all your pains, we've all had pain. We've had sorrows. You're pretty young. You haven't had many. But you'll find as you get older that to feel sorry is the saddest thing you can do. You think I sympathize with him because he's got a bad knee, a bad back, and a bad heart? That's a couple of things. I mean, it's probably more. I can't remember what they are. But he's really falling apart. But he doesn't show it. He just gets up and keeps going, and no matter what we're doing, except he fell at Arlington. But let me tell you this story. We were at Arlington with the Medal of Honor recipients, which we were invited up to Washington to be at one of their affairs, and there's a big Mucky Duck fair, and here we are. Well, we had the Medal of Honor Society was going to Arlington to lay the wreath. And there's have you been to Arlington and seen anybody lay the wreath? That wall there with the braids where they come down the stairs, well, Medal of Honor recipients are all standing here. We're standing behind him. Drizzling rain, not too bad. He's got by arm. What does he do? Down he goes in front of all these people. Medal of Honor people turned around, big bug that he is, and picked him up and put him back on his feet. And he said, my knee. And they all turned in. We've all had a bad knee. So in other words, Gunny, just stand up and keep going. But that's about all I can say without tooting my horn anymore. Anything else you would like to ask me?
Just to talk about that particular day, having nothing to do with her pushing me down.
I didn't.
March 25th, we had lunch with Medal of Honor recipients. There were 14 from Vietnam and 5 from Afghanistan. So we had 19 Medal of Honor recipients together at one time. The last time we had that many, we were at a presidential inauguration. There were 49 Medal of Honor recipients from around the country that came to participate in the inauguration. On Halloween, we'll be in New Orleans for the Medal of Honor convention, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of them. 242 Medals of Honor were issued in Vietnam alone, out of almost 59,000 young people. The medal came about in 1864. Is when the first Medal of Honor was 1863. I'm sorry, 1863. I'm correct. First Medal of Honor was issued in 1863. My great-great-grandfather earned it in 1864 and got it in the mail in 1893. Pony Express was a little bit slow to get things delivered back in those days, but
Came in the mail.
It's the highest honor you can get. 4-star generals salute Medal of Honor recipients.
Yes, they do. Not me, but they do. This, I want to show you this. Where is it here? Where is it? Replica of the medal. That was given to me. Want to tell a story? I know you are. You're over there matching at the bit. Tell them about it.
Okay, that medallion is an Army Medal of Honor. You can see the difference between the Marine Corps and the Army. And then the Air Force has their own. But Mr. Joe Rodriguez, who was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, a gentleman that we've known for many years, his uncle earned it in the Korean War. And it wasn't until President Obama presented him the Medal of Honor when they backtracked these awards to see if people got what they deserved, that he did get the Medal of Honor. And Joe went to Washington. He drove. He doesn't fly on airplanes, even though his son's a pilot. And so he had replicas made, and he presented that to Georgie probably about 8 years ago, and she wears it every single day.
I wear it with my heart. But nobody in D.C. had one of these. I have one alone. And I guess that, is there any more to our story that we can tell that's clean, good for the films or what have you? All good fun. Now, come on, you mash it a bit. What do you want to say?
One last story about.
I could enjoy that.
Actually, I'm going to mention 3 things. Prior to Bruce going in the Marine Corps, he was already a hero. He was a hero twice.
Oh dear.
He pulled his baby sister out of a canal when she fell into a canal.
She fell in.
And saved her. And one time he came home, and Miss Carter had come home from work. She said, "I'm very tired. I'm going to lay down." I think she was working 2 jobs at the time. And for 3 days, she never got up. And he took care of the girls, and finally got a hold of a doctor friend, and she actually saved her life. And that was all prior to going into the Marine Corps. So he was a Boy Scout. He was a hero.
Yeah. Started out right.
He was destined for good things. I didn't know him. I was still in Vietnam at the time that he took his action. He'd been buried in Miami Lakes for 51 years until she called me up on a Sunday night in September of 2019. She said, "I have a dying wish." I said, "You want to go skydiving?" I said, "I took you when you were 80, and I promised you when you were 88. She said, "No, I want Bruce's move to Arlington National Cemetery." Because of COVID, it took a year to be done.
October. It couldn't be done. It can't be done. Never, ever tell me something can't be done. One way or another, it can get done.
Yeah, don't tell me it can't be done.
Well, I've been telling you that for years.
The Marine Corps told me the next day he didn't rate military honors until I informed them that yes, he did, because after 2 years after he was buried, she received the Medal of Honor for Vice President Agnew. But on October 29th, I had him dug up. It was a Thursday. It happened to be my mother's 94th birthday. And I said, "Bruce, you've been in this ground for 51 years. It's time for you to leave." The next day, on the 30th, there were 250 people at the airport to see Bruce off. Dignitaries, military, police, American Airlines flew the family up for free. They put his citation on every seat in the airplane so people knew who this young man was and what he did. We landed in Washington. It was 45 degrees. The first people we meet were the burial detail. They were actually going to bury Bruce. There was a chaplain there, and of course the press was there. And finally, on November the 4th, he was buried with full military honors. And at the time, because of COVID, they said all we can have is the caisson, the burial detail, the flag bearers, and in Bruce's case, a young corporal carrying the Medal of Honor flag. The chaplain, the Navy chaplain, who was going to do the service, had been a Marine, happened to be my twin brother, and then Georgie and the family, and we were marching with the caisson to where the gravesite was. And I told everybody, be there at 1400 hours, get through security. 1500 hours is when the service is going to be, and there's a reason for that. And as we're walking, and people are getting ahead of us, and Georgie said, "They're getting ahead of us." She said, "I'm taking baby steps." I said, "I'm 6 feet too. I'm taking baby steps too." All of a sudden, the Marine Corps Commandant's own band pulls in front of us, and the Marine Corps Rifle Platoon from 8th and I in Washington, D.C. And we followed them to the gravesite. And as we got to the gravesite, I said to Georgie, "Listen and look up." And here comes 4 Marine Corps Osprey aircraft doing a flyby, doing a missing man formation. She just looked at me and said, "How'd you do it?" She said, "You never ask a Gunny how they do anything. Just the mission is accomplished." And she was at peace then, because now he's where he belongs with the other 400,000 heroes.
The one thing he didn't say, If you people saw anything when they buried Kennedy, remember? They entouraged the planes. I had the exact same ceremony. Everyone. They don't do that very often. We put our foot down, didn't we? I think that's about all we can say. I think we've talked your ear off, and I hope you've learned something.
Before we leave, I mean,
ask me anything you want.
We'd all like to hear the story of like Bruce and what how he started. I mean, he went to Miami Springs Senior High. He graduated.
Well, the Vietnam War was hot and heavy, and all his buddies, all of them, we're going to join the Marines. I'm going to join the Army. I'm going to join the Navy. And so they split off, some to the Army, some to the Navy. Off they went. I think Bruce knows one other one, Butler, young Butler. He died over there. There's another one, I can't remember. But anyway, they went to war, and I didn't see any of them again. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they made it back. And at that time, I wasn't looking into more trouble. I was that ostrich. If there'd been a place for me to put my head, that's where I had it. But then I took my head out of that hole and said, shame on you. Look what he did, and you can't stand up here and do this. God help you. Amen. What else?
No. So what year did Bruce graduate from Miami Springs?
He didn't graduate. He came out in 1968. He was all the guys didn't graduate because they all took off like a bat out of hell because they're going to save the world. So they didn't graduate. And I think boot camp, I think he picked up something there. But again, it was so long ago and so many things, and he's gone. And so again, my head was in that sand for a while. But when I took it out, what's happened? It's the way the world's been, the way I've been. Some like me, some don't like me. But
so we would like to know about the story behind him getting this Medal of Honor.
Well, there's nothing just held. There's a Gunny. He went to boot camp. They went to Vietnam. He was point man. He was leading his men. Somebody threw a grenade or something, and he jumped on it. End of story. If I'd have been there, I'd have said, don't do that. But of course, I wasn't there, so he did it. And that's, that's it. There's such few days or years in between, that we see you this age and we see you growing, but then all of a sudden you're gone, especially in wartime. And we don't know what happened to you. We don't know. All I know is when I went to boot camp, I'm looking for him, and I can't find him. And, oh, God, I'm in the wrong place. And I get a tap on the shoulder, and I turn around, and I swear he grew 4 inches when he was there. And he had no hair, and he had long, scraggly hair when he went there. And I just stood there and giggled to myself. I said, I didn't recognize my own son. And he just thought that was the funniest thing. He picked me up, whirled me around, kissed me, put me on the ground again. He loved picking me up. He thought that was cute.
Just a short synopsis of his citation is that they were in Quang Tri province in August of 1969, and he was out on patrol and with his Marines. They had gotten into some firefights, and at one point there was a fire that erupted from the action that was going on, and he was directing his Marines on how they should deploy. And a grenade was thrown, and without hesitation, he jumped on that grenade, sacrificing himself and saving his fellow Marines. I've spoken to some of the Marines that were with him when we buried him in Arlington. Some of them did come to the services. We didn't know what the extent was from his action because it was a closed casket. So we never knew, and even for about 8 years, Georgie never believed he was even in the casket.
Never believed it.
And it wasn't until I had him brought from Miami, and the day I was at the funeral parlor in Washington, I was able to be close to him. We put a brand new set of dress blues on top of his body. When they opened up the casket from originally, there was a set of dress blues that were there. They were in very good conditions. which are now at the Military Museum down in Miami. And I think at one point they might wind up on display here. But we put in a brand new set of dress blues on,
and I had.
But I'm sorry, I was just saying, I was able to feel him and know that that was a complete remains that were returned to him, because we didn't know what it would be because of what he did.
Well, I had been saving over the years all the roses that was in there. I dried them all, and I had them all in them. They got like a lot of roses. So I told Gunny, I said, I want you to put my roses in the casket. I said, these were the ones that were given to me. I said, these are his roses. And he did. He didn't get them all in, but he got some of them in.
No,
So,
I told the staff sergeant who was the funeral director for the Marine Corps, I said, we just spent 45 minutes making sure this uniform looked perfect in the casket. Now we're going to put these rose petals around it to make sure that everything was nice. I put a Marine Corps emblem inside of the casket. And then we had a motorcycle escort from the funeral parlor to Arlington. 14 motorcycles from Virginia escorted us to Arlington and made sure that nobody passed us in all those miles. They were zigzagging back and forth.
Nobody could pass us. They weren't going to let it happen. Don't you think we've been through here long enough? They probably have a class to go to, or boyfriend to meet, girlfriends to meet. They're tired of these old folks talking.
It's all right. It's all right. You guys are no bother.
No.
We're glad to have you here.
Any other questions?
Carter, growing up, did he always want to be a Marine?
No, he didn't know anything about a Marine. He's a little kid. We lived in New Orleans at the time, and his greatest fun was going down the canal with his traps, getting bluefish, getting crawdads and crabs. He'd bring them home to me, and I'd have to cook them. These kids, they went fishing. They have a house out in Key Biscayne. I don't know if you know anything about that. There's houses in I belonged to one of them out there, and Bruce and them all used to swim and do fishing, and they weren't allowed to have breakfast until they caught their fish. I mean, that was the rule. Get out on the dock and catch your fish. So they come in, I got mine, and Cheryl will come running blast up, I didn't get one. So they say you can't eat. So down the dock she'd go, and she'd end up catching one, or they'd help her, and we all had fish for breakfast and grits and what have you. But no, they were raised out at the Miami Springs Power Boat Club for weekend relaxing, and they all learned to skin dive and snorkel and get into trouble. But it was a good place to raise them. Very good place. The place is still there. My mother put up the money to build it. We couldn't afford it after a few years, so they turned it into a boat club, which is called Miami Springs Power Boat Club, and which, of course, I'm one of the ones, because my mother put the money to build it. Now, what else would you like?
Also, I wanted to know, when was the hospital name established?
About 8 years ago, honey?
In 2008.
2008.
October 2008.
Thank you.
Girls? No boys?
Do you have any advice for us for our futures?
Have what?
Advice.
I didn't hear you.
Do you have any advice for us for
Oh.
our futures?
Well, the advice is always honor your family, honor those that you live with, honor those that you work with. Never disrespect. If you don't like somebody, just turn your back and walk away. It's easier to turn your back than say something nasty. So try not to ever be. If you feel nasty, just turn around and walk away. It doesn't make you feel any better to be a snob or a brat or whatever you could be. Be yourself. Show them the good side. Save the bad side when you get home. Your mother will love it. What else?
You originally said that for 8 years you didn't think he was dead. Where do you think he was in those 8 years?
When they wouldn't let me see him in the casket, I said, well, he steps not in there. That's all there is to it. You're not going to convince me. You wouldn't let me look. And so they buried him, and I said, well, he's not there. And my heart always said that he is in Vietnam. He's still over there, parts from there. He couldn't have had anything to bring home. And that went on for years until I was national president in Washington, and I got this email, and he says, I was a medic, and I tell you that Bruce went home. I stayed with him till the Halos come and picked him up. And from that point, I met the young man and we talked about it. He said, I was there. He went home. From that point on, then I'd say, oh, darn. I used to go out there and I'd say, okay, Bruce, I'm sorry, but I didn't know you were here. But I did go back to Vietnam in, 2001 or 2002. And I went with 2 other Gold Star mothers, and we went to see where our sons, they have what do they call that, coordinate, triangulate? Anyway, there's a word that shows you exactly where they died. So I went there and I put a plaque out. And I put a plaque out for him.
That's this.
I could answer your question, but I won't. But I will tell you something. First of all, when I was able to be next to Bruce, and see that he did come home, and first thing I did, I went to the VA hospital. I had to meet with the director of the VA hospital, and then I went to Georgie's house and I touched her forearm and I said, Georgie, I can tell you now, your son came home to you, because for a fact, they did come home. When we talk about the youth of America now, I don't know about it. To me, it's kind of frightening of what's going on. I don't talk politics, but I will say this. My son is a retired Marine. His first daughter went in the Army for 3 years. She's 27 now. My grandson, who's 19, just joined the Army National Guard. His brother is 17. He's joining the Air Force when he graduates high school next month. We don't try to make people go into the military, but it's a great opportunity. If they're willing to give you $50,000 to go to college, how do you turn that down for 3 years of your life? When I was going to college back from Vietnam, all I got was $210 a month. So the opportunities are out there for you to be able to do that.
Yes.
It is frightening.
And
we're not going to be around.
No.
We're not going to be
And
around.
I don't recommend the Marines. I don't recommend the Marines. Go in the Air Force. You'll get a good education. You're more likely to stay alive for a long time. And I probably shouldn't do that, but I do. I really feel the Navy, going to the Navy to see the world, go to the Air Force. But I feel like you get your better education there. Join the Marines if you want to kill somebody. Good.
Wow.
Well, I'm just, that's what they are. They're fighting force. They don't go up and drink milk and say hi to everybody. They go out and they're badasses.
Now, just because I didn't introduce you in the beginning, if you could please say like your name and what and your rank, I guess.
Oh my God.
Everybody calls me Gunny.
Yeah.
I was a Marine Gunnery Sergeant. I made Gunny in 1980, Marine Gunny. My tattoo says Gunny.
Yeah.
Nobody knows my first name.
Really?
Lou.
My name, no, it is Lou, but nobody knows it. They just call me Gunny. I joined the Marine Corps December 13th, 1965 on my 17th birthday.
Wow.
And I was a licensed aircraft mechanic at the time. I was already a licensed pilot. And off to Vietnam I went, and I was in helicopters in Vietnam for 2 years, and a lot of other exotic places. After retiring from the Marine Corps, I had planned on joining the New York Police Department. I wanted to fly helicopters. At that time, they laid off civil service police officers in the early 70s, so I stayed in the Marines. So I joined the police department when I got out of the Marine Corps. I spent 18 months in uniform, went undercover, and retired as a detective out of New York City Police Department. And
He always carries a gun.
I have no regrets of those 50. I've been a Marine 57 years now, but of all of that service that I've done, I do it all over again in a heartbeat. And if you ask me to pick up my rifle and go to war, I'm ready to go.
Sure.
And all of us young guys at 75 and 76 would all do the same thing because we believe in this country. And
Believe in the country. That's the operative word. Believe. Believe in your country. Believe in where you live. Believe in your teachers. Listen to them. Soak everything you can up. Because one day you're going to have to dig back there for something they said to you. He told me that. I mean, it's a fact.
We all signed a blank check,
That's right.
up to and including giving your life. At the age of 17, what did we know? Because Vietnam, the world was 17, 18, 19. But we knew that we were going to go and serve our country because they were asking us to do that. And And there's no draft nowadays, but the young
Draft.
people are still stepping up. The Marine Corps is making mission. The Army's not doing as great as they want. The Air Force and the Coast Guard. Now they have Space Force. They're doing what they need to do in National Guard. It's in your hands now. It really is. And just think of this.
You are the future. You are the future of this country. You are the future of Miami. You are the future of your family. Respect them. Do what's right. If you think it's wrong, think twice. Don't do it. It'll come back to bite you sure as heck. And these phones, be careful how you use your phones. Because a lot of people put things on them they shouldn't. And then when they down the line, somebody goes in and finds it. They come and bite you. I know.
We tell that to our young Marines also, because when you friend the adults on your phone, they see what you put out there on your network, and you can't do the wrong things. So we reiterate that when we go to encampments and things, we take away their phones. They don't need to have their phones. But my 21-year-old grandson went to the same special aviation school I went to. His ambition in life is to go to Mars. That's what he wants to do. And in his lifetime, it's going to happen. He graduated aviation high school as an aircraft mechanic. He went to work for some corporations. He went to work for SpaceX, working on the Falcon 9 rockets. And the mothership that they just attempted to take off, he worked on that particular plane, even though it crashed. But they knew it was going to do that. He works for United Airlines now. At the age of 21, he got hired in August. In January, they made him a supervisor, and they moved him to San Francisco. They moved him back to Texas in March, and he's an aircraft mechanic supervisor, over 100 mechanics. And a lot of those guys are my age, so here's a 21-year-old that's telling them what to do. But he wants to go to Mars. He wants to be able to get on that spaceship and go to Mars. So if that's what you want to do, that's what you're going to do.
Okay.
I see you.
He knows what I'm saying. You're winded.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're
Sure.
quite welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to meet all of you. I hope you got something out of this besides what we've been saying, but listen to it. Listen to your hearts. Always, always, always listen to your parents. I've preached this till I'm blue, and I'm not going to preach anymore because I'm tired and I haven't had my lunch. And I'm a prima donna.
All right.
It's like,
Thank you very much.